everyone. Welcome to our first interview at the Pain Point Project. I'm Lam and we have Tam and our guest today, Memo. We're super excited to be here. Today we're going to be uncovering Memo's pain point. He was willing enough to be vulnerable in front of the camera. So thank you, Memo, for taking the time to do this and for inspiring others, hopefully, with the story that you're going to be talking to us today. Memo, if you don't mind just quickly introducing yourself. So we actually met, I think, a year and a half ago working on a startup project, if I'm not mistaken. So if you want to kind of tell our audience a little bit about you.
Hi guys, my name is Memo. I work primarily in the mixed reality realms. I like making virtual reality games and augmented reality experiences in the form of Instagram filters. As you guys can see here, this is my trustable VR headset that I like to program in. One of my goals in life is to really put a smile on people's faces through different experiences in the medium of mixed reality. I also have a brand, a streetwear brand. It's called Cerise Supply. Its main mission is to put bloodshed on a t-shirt, on hoodies, and a way to raise awareness, right? So, and in a way, not only to raise awareness, in a way to, really make somebody feel for whatever event or whatever the bloodshed of the matter is.
I mean, I've seen part of the Cerise Supplies like logo and stuff like that. Like it goes quite subtle, right? Like you can kind of wear it like more as a street fashion and everything, but it's nice to see the message behind it. So let's just dive in. We want to know, like, what was your biggest pain point in life?
I have one major pain point. This happened in May 2013. But before this particular pain point, I had everything going for me. I had no struggles, nothing, not at all. I was doing really well in school. I had a lot of friends. I would go out and party, work hard, play hard, Everything was going so smooth. I was on a great trajectory in life. Little did I know that life had something else. I don't want to say sinister, but rather like a nice slap in the face to, kind of like throw me down to the wolves, to the pit, and to make me climb back up. I did suffer from a psychotic episode in May of 2013. It was a very, very tough time. So to people who don't know what psychosis is a state, it's an episode, it's like a state where you can't tell what's real and what's not real. Now, people can look at this from a very subjective perspective and say, oh, well, perspectives per se is you not telling what's reality from, like, everybody has that, right? But really, to go a little bit deeper in psychosis is you're not believing in a certain reality to be true. You're living in that reality.
Yeah.
So if I'm in a cafe and I feel like people are watching me, if I'm sitting down and there's like many people talking around me, pre-COVID, obviously you can go to a cafe, right?
Yeah.
But like people are talking around me, I would pick up, for example, like we from one person and then R from another person and then watching from this other conversation and you. And it all bounces like...
Yeah. And to my understanding, I think when I was reading about psychosis, it's labeled as a symptom and not an illness. And there's a certain degree of how you can have a psychosis episode. A lot of people, like, they'll do drugs before going into a psychosis episode. So how did you get into living a psychosis episode? Was there a trigger that happened before?
Long story short, I had a girlfriend that I didn't really appreciate. And I had somebody else that I liked. I really, really liked her, and to the point where I deluded myself that she actually liked me back. So that's where the episode began. We had a very long conversation. It was like for 7-8 hours, we're just talking all night. In my state, I wasn't in the episode yet, but I was sleep deprived because I was talking to her all night. It was like 7 a.m. when I stopped talking to her. I slept and I woke up at 10. So 3 hours of sleep because I was so excited. My heart was beating very heavily throughout the whole night. I found beauty in a lot of things. I would wake up, oh, the sun is bright today. Everything's amazing in life, My brother found it weird too. I remember I talked to my brother that morning and he even looked at me and said, like, this doesn't look like you,
Just a quick question. Like, before you were talking to the girl crush, let's call her that, were you experimenting on drugs? Were you smoking weed?
So the night before, yes, it was only marijuana. It was long high. Like I was having crazy, beautiful conversations with people at a party. I was gaming with a homie at like 2 a.m., like playing video games, and we're crushing people online. Like it was just, I did so super well in my midterm. I just entered computer programming as my first time, and I was doing incredibly well. I did incredibly well in this midterm. So it was a bunch of like highs. And then me talking to her for 7 hours straight, that was like the biggest high. And then I figure eight, like I literally got high. I smoked, I'm just gonna say I got high, right? And what happened, how it got triggered was we went to Tim Hortons, me and my roommate. And he ordered a chicken sandwich. I ordered the egg salad. When he got his order, they gave him, I think, a tuna salad instead of a chicken salad, like the wrap. So he took it without knowing that it wasn't his order. And then this man from behind was like, hey, that's my order. So as he switched, like as they were switching their sandwiches, he was looking, I don't know why, maybe because of the beard or maybe because I looked Arab, but he was looking at me in a deathly stare, like the eyes of doom. Like he was just like, while switching it. So it's fun. Yeah, it is. It's super hilarious in hindsight because like thinking about it, it's like he probably just didn't like me, you know? But in that state where I was at, where there's like multiple highs before, immediately I thought this person was related to my girl crush. And this person was trying to stop me somehow from like getting to her or something, right?
It's almost like that layer of paranoia, right? And then all of a sudden you have these thought processes, like these connections that are being made, and they're just
that's where the psychotic episode began. But that's where it was like very manic at the beginning, where I was thinking like 5,000 thoughts a second. And I was with my roommate, and I remember we're walking. I told him not to take a corner because he's probably following us and he's probably gonna like he's gonna fucking like shoot us or something. I was in the middle of St. Catherine with my roommate. I let out the most maniacal laughter that I've ever let out. I've never let out such a laughter in my life ever again. Okay. But have you ever been in a room where the entire room just stands still? And nobody, like, it was so electric that you can't even move because it's like, I don't want to say negative energy, but there's like tension. The entire I still remember the entire street was quiet. Like everybody was talking, and then one crazy fucker like me would just let out this laugh. The entire street went quiet, right? And that's when my roommate looked at me, and that's when he realized there's something is wrong. Got quiet and dangerous. I was looking at people in a very condescending way, as if like they don't know who I am, you know. But the most dangerous part was definitely the fight with this random person that I have no idea who he is.
And you picked on them. You decided to pick on them, or was there
in my head I was doing the right thing, but in hindsight, yeah, I picked the fight for sure. Okay. It got real brutal. The cops drove me back home, and while like they kept asking me, like, do you want to go to the hospital? Do you want to go home? Do you want to go to the hospital? Do you want to go home? No, I want to go to home. You know, that's where I'm safe. And then at home, it didn't stop at all, right? Everything I'm telling you guys, there's no pain point yet. This is still me in my high. Après ça, like I walked around Montreal. The cops took me back home, and that's when I started seeing my friends. Remember, the whole day I haven't seen anybody except my roommate. Now, 7 hours later, I go back. I'm still fucked, but ça va. Now I see my friends. And that's when I that's when people looked at me and were looking, and like everybody was looking at me in a very strange way. I then contacted my brother. I want to go out to say that my brother was a person, like if it wasn't for my brother, I would have probably either still be a schizophrenic person right now, or recover from crazy schizophrenia, like still recover from schizophrenia. But I remember I messaged my brother saying, I finally get the joke. And he obviously was like, what? And I talked to him, and after only 5 minutes of talking to my brother was like, pulling his hair back because he wasn't understanding a fucking word his baby brother was saying. And basically he told me, listen, you're going to sleep here tonight. We're going to go to the hospital tomorrow. And the next day, before we went to the hospital, he said, listen, before we go to the hospital, I have to make sure. Do you think people are watching? Do you think this? Do you think that? I'm like, yeah, didn't you hear? Like the next day I was still saying, like after I woke up, I was like, yeah, like, don't you know that da. Mm-hmm. And he's like, okay, fuck. All right, taking you to the hospital. So I go to Jewish General, and this is where I experienced, I want to say, 7 days of hell. So remember when I told you guys about like how psychosis is like mental voices and your voices outside? Mm-hmm. For some reason, thank you, Canadian Health. I mean, great, it's free, but for some reason, they put me in a hallway where there's all these old people around me, and they're all talking to each other. Mm-hmm. And it was fucking brutal because I was like, I couldn't sleep. I could not sleep at all times from like 6 a.m. till 6 a.m. the next morning, mm-hmm. 24 hours a day, everybody was talking. So I was getting sleep deprived. And I basically told them like, listen, get me the fuck out of here because there's no way I can like continue on like this. It was only drug, like the medicine that they gave me that kind of calmed me down, made me go sleep. They then transferred me to the Notre Dame psych ward. I met some very interesting characters there. It was pretty fun, I want to say. Like, I don't look at that. I don't look at that time period in any disregard of it. My brother got me all these Joker graphic novels and stuff that I really got into. And then my pain point begins. This era lasted for a year and 6 months. Something called post-psychotic depression. And people have a wrong idea about post-psychotic depression where they're like, how can you be so depressed when you think people are following you, but they're not following you anymore? Or something crazy like, oh, you think aliens were following you or whatever. They wanted to kill you, but they don't want to kill you anymore. So why are you depressed? Well, think about it neurochemically speaking. Like your brain is in this crazy high where you're like the hero of your own story, where everything's making sense in life, where you're this crazy like path to greatness. You're going through the hero's journey, whatever it is. And then all of that comes crashing down and you end up in the pit where like not only nothing was real, but anybody you interacted with at that point, they think you're crazy. So I went from seeing like at least 15 to 20 people a day hanging out with people to seeing only my brother and his friends, which is like 3 or 4 people. All of my friends, they thought I was crazy. Not that they didn't want to do anything with me anymore, but there was this like certain vibe when I would be around where they look at me like something is up.
And I just want to like give a shout out to your brother for, because it's very difficult, I find, to see the signs in a person of like if they're going through like a psychosis episode or if they're depressed. Usually, like I know, for example, with depression, people don't talk about it, or there's no signs, there's no physical signs. It's not like you break your leg and somebody has to rush you to the hospital. So I think it's so interesting that your brother picked up right away on the text messages that you were sending him to be like, okay, there's something off about his character and the way he's acting. And the next step is to really get him help. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of like a blessing because I feel like a lot of people would bypass that. Like I feel like a friend might not see the signs the way that a close family member would see it because it's not physical. Like your appearance doesn't change overnight, right? It's all in your head. And so you were saying once you got out of the hospital, you kind of felt, I guess, alienated in a way for a whole year where you were not really yourself. Maybe there was a bit of embarrassment with being with people or around friends. Like, how did you
think about it this way. When I came back to reality where the depression set in, the lows were crazy. I was alienated, and the antipsychotic drugs I was taking, what they do is, let's say these are your like dopamine receptors coming out. It literally just does that, just stops it. Like, or maybe lets a little bit out, I think. But I was physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally depressed. My creativity was gone. Everything was just dull.
You were
Everything
incapacitated.
sucked. And people used to, like, I used to have friends who talked about depression and stuff. I never fucking understood it. I never understood what it meant to, like, sit. And I remember my friend told me this, like, sitting in a couch and just staring at a wall all day. I never understood what the fuck that meant until the post-psychotic depression. So it went like that for a year and a half, where there was constant suicidal thoughts. There were just like just that vibe of people not wanting to talk to me, you know. And I wasn't that desperate for their attention. I remember this, but it did get to me at some point where why is this person I used to talk to every day is not messaging me anymore? Why is that person not asking? Why is this, like, do they not give a fuck? There were a couple of people that reached out. Very, very short amount of people.
And how did it make you feel when they reached out? Were you kind of
took them for granted, but like I was like, yeah, this is expected, because like that is expected from this guy. I don't really remember what I felt, actually. I'll be very honest with you. I remember I had good conversations with some of them on Messenger, but the people that I cared about a lot, the party friends, the popular people, girls, guys, those are the people that really, like, that's what fucking, and I know in hindsight obviously it shouldn't be the case, but that's what really like fucking like stabbed me. Like, really, like, those people completely, like, I don't want to say abandoned, but it just, the vibes completely changed. Well, alhamdulillah that happened, because that taught me the value of, like, good friendship, good family, taking care of myself. This all happened, I mean, I'm still going through, like, the recovery in some sort of way till now. I would say the post-psychotic depression is, like, completely gone, but me learning from that pain point, it's still going on until this day.
So you were saying so you got put on medication for a year and a half, and you were isolating yourself for that year and a half. Was there, like, a turning point where you believed, okay, I'm slowly getting out of this? Because I mean, I met you a year ago, and you know, we did have a lot of deep talks, me and you, where it came to, like, you know, you're still smoking weed and there's certain things that you still do to cope with your emotions. And you know, you have a good circle of friends around you now, and you have people that support you. So what was that turning point? Like, how did you go from being depressed at home, being scared to be put in a social environment, to, like, I think when I met you, you were the most social person in the company. So, you know, how did you kind of create that shift in your head?
So in the summer of 2014, I indulged with my friend that I still talk to this day. He's a very close friend of mine. We've indulged in creating a lot of different short films, a lot of different scripts, photo shoots, some crazy shit that like, in hindsight, they're all shitty projects. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
But you were creative. There was momentum.
It was this big outlet for me. I was like, holy shit, I don't need weed and I can still be creative, huh? You know, so I just, like, written a lot, made these short movies with my friends. And that's what really got me out of that depression, because I mean, I kind of smoked a little bit that summer, but in no way was I paranoid. In no way was I, you know, having these crazy thoughts. On the contrary, it was awesome, because I'd be skating with my homies, filming just stupid shit, and then I'd go back home, we'd just, like, chill, and voila, we make these films. My brain is so over it that it literally just, like, if it comes, the noises, it just background that I just, like, if my brain just automatically rejects.
For people out there, like, you know, when you have a pain point, or like when you have a drastic moment happening in your life, certain people, me and Tammy were talking about this, where it's not their job to kind of be there and, like, take care of you and go through this with you. Like, certain people just don't have that strength, or just they can't handle it, and you have to accept that, and it's okay. You know, you have to accept it, but the idea with this Pain Point project is that we do want people to be open, and we're really like happy that you were able to open up with us about this. And, you know, what would you say to someone today that doesn't even know that they have a psychosis episode, that they're going through one?
Get help. If you think that your brain is going through crazy thoughts and stuff aren't making sense, and the only way you can figure that out is if people, the telltale way of figuring out if you're going through psychosis or about to go through psychosis is when people are not understanding what you're saying anymore. So when everybody around you is telling you A, but you're thinking and seeing and believing B, check yourself in the hospital. And don't be afraid to do so. It's necessary to, you know, you don't want to go through schizophrenia. You don't want to go through your whole life like believing this certain thing, right? And living in this certain reality. And I want to highlight something about the Pain Point project. I really think everybody should be very transparent. This is something I believed even before psychosis, before my mental health issues. One thing that pissed me off about a lot of people is when they're not truthful to themselves, or they don't know themselves enough, or, you know, they're not open about their own things with life. I mean, everybody has their own, you know, way of, you know, conducting themselves with life, but truly talking about the truth, being transparent with yourself, you know, opening up to people like you girls or whoever it is, it's very freeing. There are times where it's good to be mysterious. There are times where it's good to hold a little bit of information back, but when it comes to your pain, open up.
It can be very, very difficult for people to open up. I've experienced it where, you know, I was going through stuff and I didn't know how to open up, because for me it was normalized, right? Again, like some people normalize their mental illnesses and they don't see that there's anything wrong with them. And I think with the Pain Point project, we're hoping that like stories like yours, and when other speakers come in, that people can identify themselves with you, Memo, for example.
To some extent, not everyone will share all of their pain points, right? Nobody just has one pain point in their life. It's just that at some point, you know, it can get very scary because people don't want to look weak, right? But vulnerability in itself is not a weakness, but I think a lot of people unfortunately see it that way.
So yes to everything you said. And one of the ways that people can figure out that something is wrong with themselves is when they hear people like me answering to questions from you guys. Because one crazy thing about questions, and very simple questions, like what makes you happy in life, what's your pain point, whatever it is even though those questions are very simple, some people have a very hard time facing those questions to the point that they don't ask themselves those questions, or they ignore it altogether. And my first therapy session, as a closing note, my first therapy session, the therapist did not in any way say, you need to do this, you need to do that. He did not project himself in any way. All he did was ask me questions. That's it.
Yeah. Well, we're super happy that you took the time to answer these questions and to be part of our, you know, Pain Point project. And it's exciting that you did go through this experience, but you actually went through this and you came back on the other side a lot stronger. And like I said, I've met you, and, you know, we talk often, and you're very creative, and we really want to support the Cerise brand. We think that's a brilliant idea as well, to like put emphasis on events also happening around the world, right? And kind of, it's so important to have a strong community of people that want to do better in this world.
Thank you, ladies, so much for your time, for starting this initiative. I very much believe in it, and I think more people should come on the show and, you know, start revealing what their pain points are.